That was weird. Did you get it to work?
Yeah, I pressed record.
Okay, it wouldn't let me. Okay, we're good. Thank you, Adam. That was beautiful. Welcome everyone to our 10th series of Learning and Mending Understories. In this series, we'll be exploring ecologies of storytelling through speculative fiction. An understory is an underlying layer of vegetation beneath a forest canopy. In this series, we'll be thinking about the complex, vital stories that lie below and the subplots that nurture life in the shadows. Speculative fiction is a broad term that encompasses several different genres, from hard science fiction and fantasy to myth-making and folklore. The underlying characteristic of speculative fiction is that it speculates. It asks, what if? Speculative fiction plays with what is and imagines what could be. Understories does not ponder possibilities that lie in some distant future, but imagines new ways of being present. We will investigate what speculative fiction is, how it disrupts time and challenges anthropocentric visions of life, and the transformative potential it offers. In this series, our embroidery collection features a new design by Vanetta Rendler. If you would like one of these patterns or another pattern, please send us your mailing address to info@metabolicstudio.org. Tonight, we'll share our screen displaying the week's reading. Feel free to jump in and read aloud from the text as you feel inspired, as we welcome everyone to listen and give voice to the text we share each week. And now I want to share with you all this week's Embroider of the Week. And I believe that Trish has signed on to this Zoom. So Trish, I just want to say thank you. This is a beautiful bison from a previous series. And I just want you all, if you can zoom in there and take a look at that beautiful embroidery that she did, particularly in the shoulders of the buffalo. I don't know the pattern or the type of stitch it is, but it's given such great texture. So I just want to thank you so much, Trish. And before we move into the reading, let's just take this moment and do a quick popcorn introduction. I'll start. We'll just go with our name, our pronouns, where we're zooming in from, and what we're working on tonight. So I'm Jen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am working on Vanetta's pattern right now. And I am zooming in from Studio City. And I would like to popcorn it to Kate.
Hey there, I'm Kate. I am using she, her pronouns and am zooming in from Pasadena. And tonight I am working on the new pattern as well. And I will pass it along to Jasmine.
Hello, I'm Jasmine. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm zooming in from the Wiat lands of Arcata, Northern California today. Tonight I'll be listening along, and I'll pass it to Maurizio.
Hello, I'm Mauricio. I'm zooming from Highland Park and he, him pronouns, and I'm starting this new pattern as well. And I'll pass it to Matt.
Hello, everybody. I'm Matt, he, him, zooming in from Hollywood area. And tonight I'm working on breathing through my nose because the allergies have been acting up for me. I'll pass it on to Charles.
Hi, Charlie, he, him. I'm zooming from Lincoln Heights, California, and I'm just taking notes and doodling. I still need to get a pattern. I'll popcorn to Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I go with she, her pronouns. I'm calling them from West Covina. and I'll be working on a raven pattern that we have a little later. And I will pass it on to Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm in San Diego and I'm excited. I'm working on the new pattern that you all sent out. I just got it this last week. And I just finished the one with the corn from before. So starting something new. And I'm supposed to popcorn. I'm so sorry. I was a little late, so I'm not sure who's already gone. Can I popcorn Kate?
I already went.
Oh no. I'll popcorn Mauricio.
Hi, I haven't introduced myself already.
How about
Okay, so how about Emily? I saw Emily.
Yes.
Hello, Emily here in Echo Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. Good to see you all. I had forgotten that this was this evening and I was walking in the neighborhood earlier and it made me happy to remember that we have this space and we have the time together. So thank you for being here and allowing me to join you. I'm going to be listening and I might start an embroidery tonight because I think I have the new pattern on my desk. And I'm mostly just feeling really grateful tonight. So Jen, should I give it back to you? Is that why you jumped in? Should I pass it to you or should I pass it to someone else?
Oh, I was just gonna suggest someone else.
Okay, then I get to choose someone. Okay, it's very exciting. I'm gonna choose Lauren.
Thanks, Emily. Lauren calling in from Topanga, which is Tongva territory. Go by she, they pronouns, and I would love to pass it on to Ursula.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lauren. I'm working on the new pattern feebly. It's been a very nice day today. I'm calling in from Seattle, where it's been beautifully sunny and very cold and icy. So let's see what else, who I can, how about, pardon?
I'll take it from you here.
Okay,
Ursula.
great.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Izzy. My pronouns are they, she, and I'm calling in from Humboldt, California. And so yeah, I'm so happy to see you all here tonight. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you're having a sweet day. So for those of you that weren't here with us last week, we read speech sounds, or a refresher for those of you that were here with us. But the premise is post-apocalyptic Los Angeles, where a pandemic has ravaged most of the city, as well as human capacity for communication. And so speaking becomes a dangerous task. And in the absence of words forms new ways of relating, and unexpected ways of relating with each other. So Octavia Butler expresses the voice of collapse, and we continue to think about language and the body, which were themes that carried over from the weeks prior to speech sound. And so our guiding questions last week were, what possible arrangements can emerge from the collapse of institutions that attempt to render us speechless or unable to recognize each other? And what does a loss of discursive space do? And what does a space of relation look like beyond or before language? So that's what we thought about last week. And this week, we're thinking about a different type of discursive space. We're thinking about the dream space. So we will be reading Deer Dancer, which is a speculative fiction short story by Kathleen Alcala. The Coral Tree, a short piece of prose written by abolitionist Jackie Wang, and A Post-Colonial Tale, which is a poem by Joy Harjo. And And all of these texts engage with the figure of the dream space or the dreamer. And I came across Dear Dancer in an anthology called New Suns, speculative fiction by people of color. And the name of the book was actually inspired by a quote from Octavia Butler, where she says, "There is nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns." And so everything kind of just continuously loops in there. All these synchronicities keep emerging as we continue with this series that weren't even intended, which is kind of how it goes with this sort of thing. So I'll place the link to the book in that chat. And also, I just read that there's New Suns, the sequel, coming out next month. So if you're interested, you should look into that. And we read about the notion of collapse last week, and we will encounter it again this week. Dear Dancer takes place in a post-climate collapse world where rebuilding requires slipping into the dream, and also embraces the edges of precarity. And our supporting text, The Coral Tree, also comes from a place of collapse. And as Wang writes, here is the destroyed world, and here, beyond the threshold, is the luminous world. So this week we'll be thinking about the destroyed world, the luminous world, and how dreams can bridge these two worlds together. So I'll now pass it to Matt for screen share.
Dear Dancer. Huh, she said, jiggling the wrench. I've got you. The pipe came loose with a grating sound, and she reached in and unscrewed it the rest of the way. Rusty water dribbled out the end as she scuttled from under the house, waving the pipe section in the air. Brownish water spattered her skirt. It felt good. Found it. It'll be easy to fix, she said, wondering if they could find pipe the same diameter and long enough to repair the plumbing. This was the 5th house she had helped rehab, and Tater was beginning to think of herself as an expert in the undersides of houses. Shonda took the pipe from her and fingered the rusty hole. How are you going to find the right size? We've got a whole pile from the other houses around here. One of them must have used the same size, maybe even the same plumber in the first place. All these houses were built about the same time. The sun, mother sun, blazed down, and Tater pulled her hat forward from where it hung down her back on a string. We'd better get home. It was 5 bells since first light, and unless they planned to spend the rest of the day under the house, they needed to get back. Walking single file, Shonda took the lead, poking any suspicious-looking soil with her walking stick before proceeding. Tater carefully set her feet in Shonda's prints until they came to a place where the houses were lively with people preparing for midday siesta. Chia was pulling protective burlap sacking back over a patch of taters after digging up a few. The gray nubs did not look like much as they sat steaming on the ground, but washed and sliced into brilliant purple discs, they would glow. Tater's mom had named her after the naturalized ozettes. Brought from Peru by long ago voyagers, the potatoes had taken to the Northwest like, well, no other plant or animal. Tater was proud of her unusual name and secretly hoped she was like them, ordinary at first look, but gem-like on the inside, rooted.
Tater was still carrying the pipe. What are you going to do with that? Asked Chia. Match it, then recycle. The rest of the pipes held up good. This one is far enough gone. Reuse might be able to smash it into dust for the iron. Tater splashed some water on her neck and hung up her hat. Out of the sun now, she rolled up her sleeves and served herself soup she found cooling on the stove. Chia would stay up cooking so that the day crew would have something to eat when they woke from their midday slumbers around sundown. Nights worked second shift. It used to be called graveyard shift, but that made too many people sad. What to think when the sun goes down and every light takes on a spectral aspect? My eyes, ever deceitful, ever necessary for one who relies on visual cues, who only trusts the stimuli she takes in through the range of light and motion. The angular bounce of light at the solstice, of sun streaming directly into our eyes as though to make up for all the days when we see no sun at all. How our limbs loosen and we tilt back our heads with a slight smile, drinking it in. Who can deny the intoxication of sunlight, the touch of gold as it runs down our arms from our fingertips? Our thighs grow slack as our lips part to drink in the pearly heat. Our pens rest on their tables as our minds glide away from the task at hand.
Tater read a page in her aunt's diary, then set it aside. She had been given it years before, but had not tried to read it until being assigned to housing rehab. She found it hard to sleep out here on the edges. Reading the old diary helped. She loved imagining what it was like before when the sun was scarce. Tater liked stroking the soft edges. It was the only book she owned herself, and she found herself fingering the pages like worry beads. Tater lay back carefully in her hammock so as not to flip over, afraid of and grateful for the distance from the floor. Not that rats wouldn't jump or climb up onto the hammock if they felt like it, but Tater still felt better this way. Now she tried to imagine Aunt Cece's life when water stayed in its place and the sun was a welcome embrace against the damp cold. She could barely remember being cold. Not sleeping? Asked Shonda as she came in. Not yet. Shonda unhooked her own hammock from where it hung coiled on the wall and took it outside. She preferred to sleep under the giant Doug fir that sheltered their house, a tree they had defended with guns and clubs early on. Tater could smell the taters cooking. There was a herb with them, something she could not quite place as she drifted off to sleep.
Late afternoons were for domestic chores. That included upkeep on the house where they homesteaded. If they could defend it for 7 years, the house was theirs. Most people stayed on wait lists until a house opened up in the center, but that could take forever. Homesteading on the edges offered larger properties enough to grow food, and also dangers. But even for the edges, there were wait lists of people stacked sky high in mass housing. Tater barely remembered before, and there were some things in between that she could not think about at all. Shonda gently shook Tater awake. It felt as though she had just dozed off, a dream of deer picking their way across a clearing, fading gently from her mind. Your turn to wash. Tater dragged herself back to the waking world. She might have been having a true dream, but if that's what it was, it would come back. She would need to let the others know if it did. When she was a child of 8, it became clear that Tater got the dreaming. When she was 14, she was given her aunt's journal. Cece was an original dreamer, born in Mexico, raised in the US in secrecy by her family. Given every advantage to learn the language, the ways of these people so that she could rescue the rest of her family from the label them. Everyone in Cece's family, including Tater's mom, worked every waking moment to keep Cece, the youngest, in school and living long enough to pull her family through the tortuous knots of the legal system. She succeeded, and her nieces and nephews became us as well, but that was all before. Dream, salal, salal, thimbleberry, grass, smell of humans, water, stillness, stillness, light slanting in for longer days. Humans took their cues from the animals and had become diurnal. Afternoons were for chores, but night was for guarding. Second shift got up and had breakfast with the day shift's dinner. Tater could spot nights on sight. Like her, they had a dreamy look with large eyes and slightly larger nostrils. There was a lot of talk about whether this was adaptation after so few generations or just an affinity of nights for nights as partners, since that's who they got to know anyway. Every household had a combination of days and nights. Tater joined the table next to Anna one of the few nights she spoke to regularly. Sup? Not too much, just talking about the bears spotted at the north end. Again? They've no fright. Sorrel's pretty sure she heard them talking again. You mean like people talk? Yeah, she swears she can almost understand them. Sorrel was at the other end of the table describing the bear sighting. She stood up and lumbered down the length of the table, stopping to smell each of their plates, setting them laughing. Are the bears changing, or is it just you? Someone called out. Sorrel took her seat. They were eating eggs tonight, gathered from the summer chickens. Could just be me, she said honestly. I've got so I can smell people coming, even tell sometimes who it is. Sorrel flexed her powerful hands and set to her meal. Tater and me are going to need a full crew tomorrow, said Shonda. 5 people. Time to replace the roof on the Denny Way house so we can start on the inside. Plumbing's almost done. Tater's fast. Who will you work with next? Asked Anna. Tater blushed and looked down. Not for me to say. All in good time, said Chia as she began to clear the table. She might have other dawns she wants to develop. Tater thought about that. Sometimes she forgot that she could choose what she wanted to work on, who she wanted to work with, as long as it was for the common good. It hadn't been like that before, or even for a while after. Again, she had the strong feeling of the deer in the ravine nearby, and when she looked up, Sorrel had stopped eating and was staring down the table at her, still and alert. Tater pushed out her chair and stood up. I've got to dream now, she said. Rhonda pointed at Anna and Chia, who flanked Tater and escorted her out of the kitchen.
Go ahead.
Tater's team did not have a room set aside just for dreaming. She was the only one in their household, and they all agreed it was a waste of space in their small but ship-shaped house. But there was a bed in the main bedroom that was set aside for her. It folded out of the wall to offer a deep, safe space, and a clerestory cast a diffuse light in the room during the day. The bed was lowered, and Tater climbed out of her day clothes into a soft cotton gown that did not inhibit her movement. That gown of pure cotton from before was probably the most valuable thing the team owned. Tater was humbled by their goodness to her every time she put it on. Anna got a mug of water and Chia a towel. Sometimes the dreams could be rough, and Tater lost control of her body. By the time they had tucked Tater into bed and settled into chairs on either side of her, she was no longer seeing the room and people around her. It had been a few months since she had last dreamed, and the household was in some ways relieved to see what further instructions they might receive. She could still faintly hear their comforting voices. Durimete, Durimete, Anna urged. Sometimes the dream was clear and direct. Other times, they could only speculate at what it meant and what they were expected to do with the information. But no one doubted the authenticity of the dreams.
Tater was trying to run through the forest. This was big forest, not trash trees and overgrown Scotch broom. Vines grabbed at her legs and she ran, causing her to stumble. Snatching at a handful of leaves to break her fall, she felt the painful jolt of nettles in the palm of her hand. Tater gathered all her concentration into her thighs and leaped, now, clear of her human body, bounding without effort through the underbrush. Something was behind her, but she could not see it. The smell was pungent, like fire, like chemicals burning a hole in a metal container. Her human thoughts soon fled as she spotted another of her kind and followed, leaping sideways and forward so as to throw off any pursuers. She crashed through salal and salmonberry, fiddlehead fern, and seeps where fresh sets rose when it rained. This was the damp country she remembered, the before of her childhood, when everyone had enough to eat, clothes to wear, homes to live in, when children went every day to school to learn to live in a world that no longer existed. Tater held the raised sides of the dream bed and rode it like a little boat, rocking and bucking as she moaned and made strange noises. Anna and Chia were there to try to keep her from hurting herself, and she had on occasion, and to take note of anything she might say out loud. While in the grip of her dream, they made themselves comfortable and didn't have to say that they were pleased to have finished their dinners ahead of the dream.
When Tater woke, it was dark and very quiet. She was alone. She listened to the silence for a few minutes before rising. Climbing out of the bed, she walked out to the kitchen. A single lamp burned on the table. The dishes lay scattered, some with food still on them, as though abandoned shortly after Tater left. She stepped in something wet and looked down to see a dropped mug. Walking carefully, she returned to the bedroom and climbed back into the dreaming bed. When Tater woke again, it was deep night, and again she was alone in the house. She listened to the silence for a few minutes before rising. The lantern still burned in the kitchen. Tater took a flashlight and walked out on the porch. The night shift should have been out on the perimeter making noise, but Tater heard nothing. A strong smell of bear filled her nostrils, and she returned inside to bolt and bar the door. Tater could not tell if she was dreaming or not. This happened sometimes. Her surroundings felt real, but where was everyone? Wouldn't she have heard something if there had been an attack? Wouldn't they have taken her with them, even if she was in the throes of a dream? Tater climbed back into the dream bed once again, just in case. Tater woke a third time, her left hand sticky where it had gripped the raised edge of the bed. When she lifted her hand and opened the palm, it was sticky with blood. Tater woke at 10 bells. Chia snored daintily in the chair beside her. Voices came from the kitchen, laughing and the sound of dishes and cooking. Tater pulled on her clothes, folding the gown gently across the coverlet. Chia woke and helped return the little bed to the wall. In the kitchen, they were greeted with the clatter of dishes being dried and stored. Anna sang a high, silly song. Sorrel walked up to Tater and reached out. Tater flinched and Sorrel stopped before gently bringing her hand down on Tater's shoulder. "You've got news for us." Tater opened her hand to show Sorrel where the stiffened blood had resolved into the outlines of a map, their own settlement at the center, the edges stretching beyond.
They greeted the night with a collective roar. The members of the house were in full regalia. Tater wearing her inherited cocoon rattle leggings. She lifted her canes, one in each hand, and set the tip of each down, the way a deer daintily makes its way through the forest. She turned her gaze this way and that in mimicry of the deer, careful not to lose the antlers strapped to her head. The drummer beat a bowl with 2 sticks turned upside down over a larger bowl of water, creating a booming sound that carried for miles. Anna's voice wailed a descant. The dancers made their way forward and back, turning sideways in unison to appear larger to the unseen enemy. Arise, arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Dancers from other houses flanked them, creating a front of noise and light against the outside. Tater felt vulnerable in her soft doe-skin clothing, conscious of how exposed her throat was each time she turned her head, knew that the bandage on her left hand showed she might be wounded. This is how they took back the world, step by step, song by song. At the end of the night, new fence posts would be pounded into place, new fences strung. Tater lifted and sent her canes carefully. The extra points of support allowed her to keep her feet close together as she pounded the ground with them, directing her energy deep into the earth. Tater realized that if she ever had a daughter, she would name her Ozette. This was new, the consciousness that she might have a future beyond herself. Tater's face shone in the flickering light. It was good to be alive.
The coral tree. I've been having such strange and beautiful dreams lately, though I was only able to sleep for a couple of hours last night. I dreamed I was walking through a bombed out abandoned building, just a shell of a building, really. There were no windows or doors, and it was quite dark. But right outside of the doorway, there was a luminous tree. Not just any tree, but a coral tree. Not just any coral, but the stony sea substance. And this radiant tree was growing up out of a little pond that shimmered in the light. And instead of leaves, it was covered in delicate glass threads. Everything was very bright, and I knew that as soon as I exited the dilapidated building and passed through the doorway, the world would really open up, kind of like that rush you get in the morning when you step out of your house and into the sunlight. I write this because maybe I'm thinking of what Michael Hart says about the imagination being constitutive. The way the imagination becomes so intense and embedded that it becomes real through its intensification and articulation. So I think these flashes of the luminous world should be shared. I don't believe the imagination can fix everything. I am a rigorous materialist, but it can do some of the work of creating openings where there were previously none. In my talk on revolutionary loneliness, I reminded the audience that how we choose to interpret life and death is not neutral. Interpretation itself is always strategic. Some interpretations are more politically and personally enabling than others. I think of this when I write my dreams down in the morning. When I had this dream, I thought, here is the destroyed world, and here, beyond the threshold, is the luminous world. Simone Weil says, the greatest calamity the human race can experience is the destruction of a city. That's where I was, walking through a destroyed city. But the luminous tree
A post-colonial tale. Every day is a reenactment of the creation story. We emerge from dense, unspeakable material through the shimmering power of dreaming stuff. This is the first world and the last. Once we abandoned ourselves for television, the box that separates the dreamer from the dreaming. It was as if we were stolen, put into a bag, carried on the back of a white man who pretends to own the earth and the sky. In the sack were all the people of the world. We fought until there was a hole in the bag. When we fell, we were not aware of falling. We were driving to work or to the mall. The children were in school learning subtraction with guns. We found ourselves somewhere near the diminishing point of civilization, not far from the trickster's bag of tricks. Everything was as we imagined it. The earth and stars, every creature and leaf imagined with us. When we fell, we were not aware of falling. We were driving to work or to the mall. The children were in school learning subtraction with guns. The imagining needs praise, as does any living thing. We are evidence of this praise. And when we laugh, we're indestructible. No story or song will translate the full impact of falling or the inverse power of rising up. Our children put down their guns when we did to imagine with us. We imagined the shining link between the heart and the sun. We imagined tables of food for everyone. We imagined the songs. The imagination conversely illumines us, speaks with us, sings with us, drums with us, loves us.
Great. Thank you everyone for reading tonight. So the guiding questions. First, I want to talk about dreams briefly. So the dream, I see it as kind of an unlocatable space or a vision, and it challenges the real and cracks open the possible and is always arriving, but is never totally here. So what this means is that it's always present to a certain extent, but dreams, like speculative fiction, have the potential to imagine the impossible. And through this imagination, what is being envisioned is brought into possibility. What separates speculative fiction from dreaming is the experience. So the dream space is an experience space. We all go through it and it goes through us. And in our experience of dream space and dreams, in our experience as dreamers, the real and the unreal become indistinguishable. So this holds, I would argue that this holds radical potential for reshaping our realities, because to submit reality to a dream, as opposed to the nightmare of the real world, like capitalism, colonialism, fascism, etc., is to reclaim life and life stories, or understories, as the series is called. So Tater in the Deer Dancer dreams from the site of collapse, and in Wang's dream, a luminous tree was glowing from the ruins, and Harjo's poem describes imagination and imagination's power illuminating from out of a diminished civilization. She writes, "We emerge from the dense, unspeakable material through shimmering dream stuff." So there are obviously differences between the imagination and the dream space and the mode of or genre of fiction. But what they all have in common is the capacity to bring new worlds into being from out of the ruins of a collapsed world, or maybe even imagine the collapse of the nightmare worlds around us. So I guess questions for tonight are, what do you wish to dream from out of the ruins? Have you had any dreams lately that you want to share? What does the role of dreaming have or hold in your life? And what do you think are the limits and potentials of imagination? And you don't have to answer any of these questions out loud or even in your head if you don't want to. If you're like, these are stupid questions and I don't like them, that's fine. But feel free to share any thoughts you have on them or on the stories that we read tonight in general, or even how dreaming and if you see dreaming and fiction being speculative fiction being connected, or yeah, whatever thread you want to pick up on, I welcome you to do so. And yeah, so feel free to hop in the conversation.
Izzy, that's a hard wave to get on your surfboard and paddle out to. Listening to you speak is just one of life's great pleasures. I'm wondering whether this is one of those breakout room kind of evenings. Do you think that people feel more comfortable about talking about dreams in smaller groups?
Sure, why don't we do breakout rooms?
Shall we try that,
Excuse-
everybody?
Yeah, excuse me, before we do that, I was so caught up in what you were saying, Izzy, that I really would appreciate being able to, if you could type the questions or reiterate them a bit, because it was just a lot.
Yes, I put the questions in the chat.
Oh, I see them now. Thank you so much.
No problem.
But the chat doesn't go with you to the breakout room. So if you want to hold on to it, maybe copy and paste it like into like an email before you go into the breakout room, because you won't be able to see the chat bar, unfortunately.
And can you say, can you read them, Izzy, again, just because your voice carries us there?
Sure. What do you wish to dream from out of the ruins? Have you had any dreams lately that you want to share? What does the role of dreaming have in your life? And what do you think are the limits and potentials of imagination?
Okay, I'm gonna open up the breakout rooms. We'll see you all there, and then we'll come back here. everyone, and welcome back. If anyone would like to share what their group was discussing, that would be great.
It's hard to share dreams. It's your open window to your soul, and it's sharing them is challenging, and especially when your dreams are wild, which is so true for many of us. The attraction to artists of this discussion, to this format is it's magnetic, it's huge. And I think it's hard to articulate the tenderness and the fragility of opening up to that extent.
And we did share one of the group share a dream, but everyone I think connected to right away. It was about flying, and I think everyone in the group went like, "Oh yeah, flying." I mean, it's such a powerful, beautiful dream.
Something we talked about in our group. I'm very obsessed with dreams. Lucid dream for a while, and kind of talking about that aspect of kind of making a subconscious activity conscious, being able to kind of explore that subconscious and almost attributing it to like the collective consciousness, almost like the ocean that we're all in. And like dreaming allows you to dive in and like gain information that you might otherwise not be able to obtain. And I thought we ended it. I won't, she doesn't want to share, she doesn't have to, but interesting conversation about ancestral like memories in these dreams and maybe how it's connected to that like collective conscious.
Yeah, I wanted to also kind of like point out that it does seem to be difficult to talk about dreams in public. And sometimes I feel like, why would my dream interest anybody else? Or I feel afraid that if I explain my dreams, then I'm losing my like coat of ego armor or who I think I am. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a very vulnerable thing, and it's not something that I practice enough in my daily life with friends and colleagues, is like to make space to talk about dreams. And I was kind of aware that recently I had the privilege of being invited to do ceremony with Tina Calderon, who's the Tongva cultural bearer on our site at Metabolic. And you know, a couple weeks later, she wrote me and said, "Have you had any interesting dreams since ceremony?" Like I just thought even the fact that she would think to ask that as a question is so different from how sometimes if I've had an experience with people, I don't usually call them and say, "Hey, did that set off any like interesting dreams for you?" And I wonder if there's something in that, you know. I wonder if, since we were reading speculative fiction from Indigenous voices, whether part of the ease of bringing up sort of daily things like potatoes and the things we eat, the kind of normalness of it, like it's not like speculative fiction in the same way, say, Ursula K. Le Guin would write a speculative fiction where like everything is invented and names of people are invented and it's very other. But we're like these people, but they're definitely like other. There was something very normal about the Deer Dancer characters.
Ursula Le Guin actually has a book called The Lathe of Heaven, which is about dreams. And in this one, there is a lot of like, there's aliens and it's Ursula Le Guin. So it's in her style, but it is about this person who wakes up one day and realizes that when he dreams something, it comes into existence. And so he starts seeing a psychiatrist who realizes that this dreamer is like able to bring things into being, and he is a power hungry psychiatrist. So it's an interesting things evolve and it's a really good story. It's a short one. And I guess what in our group we talked about dreams. We talked a lot about a lot of different stuff, but something that came up was how dream can mean both like a vision that you have when you're asleep, but also a vision that you wish to aspire toward or wish to bring into being, and something that you want to happen. And how we just talked about that, and how dream can mean multiple different things, and how that in itself kind of means something, that there's something like real or tangible about a dream.
As you were talking about Ursula Le Guin, there is this book of her, the word for world is forest, that the characters exchange a lot with dream and reality in a forest context. That reminded me of a more recent book, The Fallen Sky, that was written by a Brazilian indigenous shaman, Davi Kopenawa Yanomami, that he describes a lot of the process of becoming a shaman, and how the Yanomami people exchange with dream, and see that like the dream as a very important component of the reality and the way they are living. And there's a very famous quote that he says that the other, that is like they call white everything that is not indigenous in the Yanomami. So they said something like that the white only dreams about themselves. Uh, he says that to describe how the Yanomami dreams about many uncountable, impossible things that are not related to a pre-imaginary source, like something that you already saw, something that it comes from a film that you watched, that something that didn't came from anywhere. And the book it's pretty much about like how Western societies are losing this bond of connecting to something beyond our culture. Anyway, I just want to recommend that. And we were talking about that in our group as well, like how we could exchange more of dreaming and living.
Also, the questions made me think of Walt Disney, because he talked a bit about dreaming, and he, I think, quite literally believed nothing was impossible, and for better or for worse. And I think the manifestation of his dream obviously had a lot of other inputs ultimately to become Disneyland, but I'm pretty sure it initially began as a utopian endeavor, but also there's something so top down about that utopian dream of like, because it's all tied into his art too, and now it's really blurry, like all this mythology that he, or I guess not just he, but that whole company has created over time, and that mythology paired with these spaces where people come and spend money, and it's very much for profit. Um, but I think for what bumps for me in that sort of translation of a dream or many dreams combined is that it feels perhaps tainted by the profit motive, but also like feels very sterile and artificial, and like everything is everything is brand new, and you can see the seams of things. I haven't been to Disneyland since I was 18 in high school, but I think I remember feeling unsettled by it. And to me, that feels like some version of this, but perhaps not, the best, but a quite literal translation of like dream to reality and trying to convert those dreams through art into a vision of the future or something.
Yeah, I just like thinking about thinking about this concept of like dream as a place to go, or like this dream as like a landscape, dreaming as like an action container is what I'm really thinking of, like kind of like wrestling with right now. Um, Especially this, I don't know, Izzy, when you were talking about like the two meanings of the dream, I was thinking about one way that we can find new meaning is a difference between like even the dream and the thought. Like if the thought is like kind of like something that's more concrete, the dream as a landscape is somewhere that has more of a desert feel. It has more of like, it's just like it just can bring up a different kind of like way of holding a dream if you're allowed to think of it as a landscape to go into and breathe into, and we're living in somebody else's dream all the time and building utopias based on somebody else's dreams. So yeah, I'm just kind of giving texture to the space of a dream.
Yeah, I like that you link dream to thought, um, and thought as kind of like this aliveness, has this aliveness to it. And I think it always, I mean, next week we'll be reading, we'll be watching a clip from Sun Ra's Space is the Place. And we will be reading a few selected poems and prose, a collection of writings from Sun Ra as well. For those of you who don't know, Sun Ra was an incredible musician and composer, and he basically pioneered the Afrofuturist genre. And in Space is the Place and in these writings comes this notion of like the vibration of place that comes up a lot. As a musician, he's thinking about the vibrations of place. And so next week we'll be reading, there's actually a poem that I have for the selection where he's talking about thought as alive and thought as a place you go to, and also space and think the cosmos. And there's all these things that I think will flow really easily into next week. When we do think through, he writes about dreaming too and mythology. So I'm really excited for the transition. And then the next week after that, we will be reading a manifesto called the Manifesto of the Committee to Abolish Outer Space. So next week we'll be reading about space as this kind of fun imaginary place to go to. And then the following week will be, which is we'll be reading about, sorry, my brain is dead right now. It's getting to the end of the hour, but we'll be reading about abolishing outer space, which is all I'll say for now. So I'm going to pass it to Lauren now for the Discord.
Oh, sorry. I just had if I may add a thought.
Yes, please.
Building on what Jasmine was talking about, it made me think of, isn't there the concept of Maya, which is that dream, that reality is a collective dream. And I believe it comes out of certain cultures in India. Something I learned about a long, long time ago. If anybody else has any insights about it.
I think, yeah, it translates to illusion, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I was thinking about if I have a second, Izzy, do we have to go? Do I have to go?
Oh, please share.
That you mentioned the space of the unlocatable. And I found from the discussion in my group is this very blurry space where dreams live between an imaginary space and a real space. And it kind of took me back to how you, the notion of self before you have language, right? And it's very blurry, like babies are the light shining on the wall. It's not, I'm over here and the light's over there. So there's something we must remember about that fantasticalness. And I also think of like little kids often are in just a completely psychedelic state often, they are walking around seeing rainbows of color. And that's just their kind of everyday experience. And so, to think about the dream as connecting to the pre-verbal, because when we acquire language, it's a distancing device to take us further away from ourselves. So anyway, I just thought that was something to bring up.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing, I think specifically, definitely like Western language too, where there are languages that, incorporate dream into an understanding or framework of being that already is kind of more on like, the edges between, or has a more expansive understanding of a like deterritorialized self, or something that's like expanding or more open. And there's something specifically about, the English language and that collapses that.
Yes, and there were all those French feminists in the 60s that were trying to write in a language that wasn't patriarchal. So they were trying to find, it reached problems of essentialism, but they were really, really struggling to find how to write outside of that.
Well, it's interesting also how the cadence of a conversation about dreams is itself a dream-like conversation. I've been enjoying the space between comments and the fact that all of our visuals look like we're hanging on to the strands of conversation in a way that's quite dreamlike. Because some of the time when I get Zoom fatigue, it's because of the cadence by which we try and fill all of the empty space of Zoom. So I'm finding the handwork and the poetics of the texts and the attempt to share dream space to have a very different cadence that I quite enjoy. And ordinarily at this point, I would direct us to the opposite of dream space, which is the manifestation of thought and the continuity of these sessions that can happen on Discord. But that just sounds like a ridiculous thing to be talking about. So I'm going to skip it this week and just say, if you want to hear about the Discord, Matt will be here to talk to you about it, because he can probably use his language. But I'd rather just listen to Adam play the violin at the moment than talk about Discord, because the violin is like another portal to dreaming. for me at least.
It is. It's one of like the dreamiest instruments.
Yeah.
Is the sound coming in okay?
Sounds great.
I wrote that one today for today's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That blew my mind.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me play.
That was killer.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful.
Thanks.
Let's
Man, it made me
see.
so nervous, but that feels good. There's that rush.
Yeah.
Nerves, but yeah, really appreciate it. See you
Well, thank-
guys on Friday for
Yeah,
the
definitely.
singing.
Take care.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.